Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to day two of our transfer summit. You are in the session "Is Not Too Early to Think About Transferring." I am Brian Hodges. I am your moderator from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I want to thank you for attending our session. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. This is a Zoom meeting. The presentation will be recorded, so if you do have to step out, you'll be able to access this presentation at a later date. Right now you are muted, but you also please close out your video just to make sure you're able to watch all the information being put forward in the presentation. If you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll make sure they'll be answered before the end of this presentation. So without further ado, we're going to have Nick, Samantha, and Ashley introduce themselves and get started with the presentation.
Thanks, Brian, and good morning and happy Friday, everybody. Thanks for attending our presentation. It's not too early to think about transferring. As the name suggests, we wanted to create a presentation to help explore the full life cycle of a transfer student, starting as early as their time in high school. While a lot of our material will be geared towards our high school and community college partners, we think the four-year audience will also appreciate taking this time to reflect on their own approach to transfer students and consider some of the useful resources we'll highlight throughout our presentation. Our expert panel that you'll be hearing from today includes myself, Nick DeFalco, Director of Transfer Admission at North Central College in Naperville, Illinois.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Miranda, and I'm the Assistant Director of Transfer Recruitment at Illinois State University. Happy to be with you all today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Jarrell, and I am an admission rep at College of DuPage. Welcome to our session.
Thanks, everybody. So Ashley's going to kick things off for us this morning, outlining the benefits and considerations for earning college credit while in high school. Then the three of us will walk you through the key transition points between high school to the community college, and then the community college to the four-year institution, pointing out especially helpful resources along the way. And then we'll close by identifying and debunking some common myths and misconceptions about transfer students and the transfer process. If at any point you have questions, please make sure to write them in the chat so we can address them during the Q&A session at the conclusion of our presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ashley.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. So yeah, as Nick was saying, we are going to kind of start at the beginning of the life cycle of a transfer student. So at the beginning of kind of thinking about the transfer process, you generally have a student who's in high school. So when you look at opportunities to earn credit while in high school, many community colleges have a variety of different programs in order to achieve that goal. Sometimes I think the names can throw people off because these names are used interchangeably. So whether your community college partner has dual credit options, where a student is taking classes at their high school and earning both high school credit and college credit, if your community colleges have an early admission program where students are taking classes at the local community college and kind of starting that transcript right away and working with their high school to see if there can be a dual partnership there. Or again, some more unique programs, some that we have at College of DuPage, is working to get that student kind of up to college ready material. So through potentially a math transitions program where a student is, kind of getting up to speed with their foundational math in order to be ready to go once they start at the community college, or even at the four-year institution to kind of get up to that college level math. There's lots of different types of early credit offerings when you think about that from a high school perspective. So some benefits and considerations to keep in mind when thinking about dual credit. One of the things that I think we see a lot of times when we're working with high school counselors and high school students is the idea of, I am just going to load as many college credits as I can on my transcript because that's what colleges want. And in reality, I think every student has a different story and every student is going to use dual credit or early credit options in a different way. So are you using these courses as a preparation for college? Are these courses academically challenging for you in terms of what goals you're looking to accomplish? Again, getting that head start and earning college credit. So maybe you have a student that is very high academic achieving and they are looking to kind of build that foundation. That's a great way to kind of get started in earning that college credit. You may also have a student that's really looking for exploring different career options at classes that you might not offer at your high school. So for instance, really looking into cosmetology or looking into automotive classes that, again, might be more limited at the high school level. Thinking about establishing a college GPA. So if, again, you have a student that is looking to kind of build on that, that GPA before they actually start at the community college or at the four-year institution, it's another good option there as well. It can help with acclimation of college classes, especially if you have a student that is taking classes at the institution. So obviously in COVID, it's a little bit different because many schools are still doing these virtual classes, but it's still allowing the student an opportunity to be in a college classroom, be in a college setting, interacting with other peers and students that might be much older than them. So really giving students that life experience. Being aware of prerequisites needing to take classes. So especially as a high school guidance counselor, it may be tempting to kind of help students get started in these college classes, but really familiarizing yourself with what the student needs to take in order to be able to enroll in those classes. And then finally, really thinking about what the destination is for that particular student. So if a student is looking to utilize community college courses to go directly a four-year institution, those classes they might take might look different than a student that is looking to really get the associate degree at the community college and then move forward from there. So again, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution for each student. Every student's going to be customized a little different when thinking about dual credit and early admission opportunities. So some resources and recommendations when you're thinking about this transition from the high school to the two-year and then from the two-year to a four-year to kind of consider in this process. So from the high school to the two-year college, getting help from these resources is really important. As a high school student in particular, the high school counselor is really their go-to person. So if you are a high school counselor in this room, really thinking about how can you best familiarize yourself with the community college. So I think it's important to think about the community college as a resource for all students. Because even if you have a student that is planning to go directly to that four-year institution, having an opportunity to utilize the community college for all students is really important. Again, not a one-size-fits-all approach to community college. We have many students that know that they're going to go directly to that four-year, but they may take a class over the summer to get a head start. They may take a class while they're in high school, again, to build on that foundation. So it isn't just this, yep, you are starting at community college and then you are going to transfer. There's a lot of different pathways in there. So it's important to know all of these offerings so you can best support your students. In addition, really getting to know the admission or counseling office at the community college that you're thinking of attending. Again, a community college, depending on how you want to use it, can for sure be used as that direct foundation before hopping to that four-year, but we might be used as a quick stop along the way as well. So really familiarizing yourself there. Attending a prospective student presentation or tour at your community college. So in COVID, for us at College of DuPage, this looks a little bit different, but it has not limited our ability to serve students. So this semester alone, we have 44 virtual events geared to students of all different levels. These topics range anywhere from scholarship opportunities, first generation series, to next step sessions, to academic spotlights that highlight specific divisions. And in some ways, I think that having these virtual offerings has made it a little bit more accessible for students to get this information, even from the comforts of their own home. Additionally, opportunities to really connect with students that are currently at the community college, general sessions, Zoom appointments, you name it, we have it. So especially as a high school counselor, making sure that you are aware of all of these options as well as you are kind of advising students on their next steps for transitioning to either the community college or a four-year program. And then familiarizing yourself with transfer partnerships and agreements. I think that sometimes you can get lost in the sea of all of these acronyms. So especially as a high school counselor, really just understanding the big ones and really kind of getting an idea of best serving your student from that high school level. This will allow them to kind of have an idea of the clear pathway for their next step without, feeling like they're losing any time starting at the community college. So some of these transfer agreements and partnerships that I wanted to highlight, just as some examples, many community colleges have similar ones, but I think that these are really important to kind of know about. So when we think about transfer agreements and pathways, some of them that come to my mind, for instance, are a TAG agreement with the University of Illinois at Chicago. So the reason some of these partnerships are really important, especially to know more about, is that the TAG agreement, for instance, at UIC allows students to earn their associate degree at the community college, maintain a 3.0 GPA, and then transfer directly into the program of their choice. So for some students, a 3.0 would get them into pretty much any program at UIC. However, when you think about some of the more competitive programs such as computer science, engineering, many times those GPAs are much higher. You're looking at a 3.5 or above. So really getting the student connected to some of these unique transfer partnerships from the beginning can really create kind of a little bit of leg room and a little bit more of that certainty when thinking about transferring on to another four-year institution. In addition to TAG, we also have the Engineering Pathways program, which is a unique partnership with U of I. Again, an opportunity for a student to save money starting at community college, but not sacrificing academic rigor. Having that Associate of Engineering Science pathway for a student to complete, being able to connect both with the community college advisors as well as the four-year advisors really helps make that pathway a lot smoother. And then even some of the more unique ones, such as our 3+1 programs. So again, these are all opportunities to kind of educate yourself on what these guaranteed partnerships look like, so that you have the ability as the high school counselor to say, okay, I know that these partnerships exist. So if you were to start at the community college, this is a more direct pathway, a more seamless transition to what your next step will be. So again, all good things to kind of look into as you are assisting students in that transition process. So some questions to kind of ask the community college admission counselor. Does the two-year college have a special transfer relationship, often called an articulation agreement, with any four-year colleges? So again, I think that sometimes we throw around articulation agreement, IAI, and that can kind of confuse students at times. So really making sure that if you are a high school counselor, helping coach the student and understanding the questions to ask. So really thinking about if the student has a very particular school that they're looking to graduate from, seeing how they can get connected early on to those resources is going to be really important. Will the credits I earn be accepted at the four-year colleges I'm considering? I think we all have that student that has the story of, well, my sister's best friend's boyfriend went to community college and none of the credits transferred. Well, yes, there are those horror stories along the way. Really allowing students to have this proactive approach at the beginning and taking responsibility for their credit transfer process is really empowering and really important. At the community college and at the four-year institution, we don't want students wasting their time by just, again, stacking up those credits that might not serve them, whether it be in the transfer process or the career exploration process. So helping them have those discussions is going to be imperative when thinking about that transition. What grades do I need to earn in my classes to get credit at four-year colleges? You know, every college has a different standard depending on the competitive nature of the institution, but really having that discussion that grades matter early on from that high school transition is going to be important. Minimum GPA I need to maintain to get into four-year colleges. Again, another thing that's going to be different depending on each institution. So having that discussion early. Ensuring that you graduate on time. I think that, again, with this idea of dual credit and early admissions and other early college credit offerings, this gives students a lot of flexibility to build a foundation before they start at the four-year institution or at the community college. I think that especially now with COVID and with a lot of financial uncertainty, if a student is utilizing dual credit and early admissions to their advantage, they can really do a lot of classes affordably, and from the foundational class standpoint, save a lot of money along the way and kind of moving towards their graduation timeline. So important to kind of know how these credits are impacting that graduation timeline. And then lastly, the maximum amount of credits that you can transfer to a four-year university. So I usually tell students, while we want you to utilize the community college to your advantage, you know, making sure that you don't overstay your welcome at the community college in terms of credit transfer. You know, being purposeful in the general education classes you're taking, in the technical classes that you're taking, so that you're not only maximizing your ability to save money and do things affordably at the community college, but that you are transferring right at the right time for your individual plan. So again, these questions are all ones that are important to help students get that primer when thinking about starting transferring from that high school level. I am going to go ahead now and turn it over to Samantha to talk a little bit about that transferring from the two-year college to four-year college and how we work together and make that happen.
Thank you, Ashley. Yes, in this next section, Nick and I will be discussing our recommendations for a successful transition from the two-year to the four-year, and then some transfer assurances that students and high school counselors and advisors should know. So to begin, knowing the destination school as early as possible is key. If students know where they want to transfer to and are able to understand and make a plan and work toward not just admission to the four-year, but a timely degree completion, that's essential. So our first piece of advice is for students to shop around and shop around early. Year after year, it always surprises me how many transfer students wait until the semester before they transfer to visit campus for the first time and to learn more about our university. Rather, I recommend students utilize the four years website to explore academic options, social fit, and scholarship opportunities while they're still in high school. From their visit, whether in person or virtually, many colleges have transfer-specific visit opportunities where the experience is fully transfer focused. These visits often encompass a transfer presentation covering everything from the college's transfer population, resources, scholarships, guaranteed admission programs, as Ashley shared. Students who are considering transferring should take advantage of these opportunities early. This year, exploring from home was easy through virtual transfer information sessions and campus tours, financial aid sessions, and even YouTube channels dedicated to exploring topics of interest. Community colleges, of course, also have excellent opportunities to connect their students with the four-year college, As a four-year admissions representative, I attend in-person and virtual transfer fairs, on-the-spot admission days, table visits, and advisor updates, all at the community college to connect with students and our two-year partners. Our second piece of advice is plan ahead. Students need to meet with their community college advisor and make an academic plan. Of course, in an ideal world, students would know what they wanted to major in and where they wanted to transfer to from day one, and they wouldn't change their minds. But knowing that that's rarely the case, early planning allows for major exploration, ensures that students are taking recommended courses and are prepared for their transition. Checking back with their advisor each semester as they get more locked in to a destination school and program, academic plans are likely to shift. Seeing the whole picture early on is a major benefit too, as they see their time at the two-year and how it will look, and then they see that end goal. Often Nick and I and other transfer counselors review academic plans just to ensure and confirm everything looks good on the four-year end. And you can see that North Central has a transfer planning worksheet here that's a really nice visual, once again, for students just to see how it all fits together. Another piece of advice, with a few exceptions, of course, depending on the major, is encouraging students to consider completing the associate's degree. Is often part of our conversations. We know students who complete associate's degrees have better completion rates for bachelor's degrees than students who do not. So explaining associate's paths and the differences among the options is an important conversation to have early on. On the screen here, we have the AA and the AS degree requirements, the two types of transferable associate's degrees. The Illinois Articulation Initiative General Education Package is part of both. The AA degree has a gen ed package fully incorporated, and the AS degree is specifically designed for STEM areas of study and therefore has a modified gen ed package, which allows students in STEM fields the opportunity to remain on track with their cohorts at the four-year institution and complete a couple of general education courses after they transfer to their institution of choice. With that, students need to know what transfers. This is the #1 question I get. Will my courses transfer and how? So sharing some assurances on the front end as early as possible goes a long way in alleviating this common worry. Two tools to help our Illinois transfers see transferability of courses are IAI and Transferology. IAI is the website that hosts and explains and shares the Illinois Articulation Initiative requirements. IAI is a statewide transfer agreement, which is transferable among more than 100 participating colleges and universities in Illinois. And on the iTransfer website, students can easily see what courses have been approved for general education core curriculum. All 48 community colleges in Illinois participate in IAI, along with our 12 publics and many privates. If a course is an IAI course at a community college, it's an IAI course at the destination school if they participate. It's a safe way to ensure transferability of credit. Transferology is a national tool where students can enter their courses and find equivalent courses at other schools. This is just yet another resource to confirm that courses will transfer from one institution to another. In addition, 4 years often have their own articulation agreements that Nick is going to be discussing now.
Thank you, Samantha. So yeah, really just building off of these past few slides, we've all kind of collectively identified some of the benefits of earning an associate's degree, as well as some useful resources to determine if community college courses will transfer to the four-year institution. But now we want to expand upon that and answer how these courses will transfer over. A few visual aids that we've put up here to help. On the left-hand side, we have a few examples of articulation guides at Illinois State and at North Central. The different institutions may have different names for these documents. Articulation agreement, articulation table, transfer guide, course substitution guide, but all of them in theory do the same thing. They show you the community college course in one column, how it will transfer to the four-year institution, if it carries an IAI code or designation, and if it fulfills a general education requirement. And while it's incredibly important for institutions to maintain these guides, it's how accessible they are that really makes the difference. They need to be front-facing and easy to locate on your website. This is arguably the most important recruiting and advising tool available to our transfer students. So if it isn't easily accessible on your website within a few clicks, you should consider auditing your transfer webpage to make sure these resources are easy to find. Another best practice with these guides is to make sure they live on the corresponding community college webpage too. Again, we want to make sure these resources are easy to find for students, parents, advisors, and counselors. And having them linked back on the community college webpage is incredibly important. Going one step further, some institutions will provide some major or program-specific planning sheets. The example I provide on the right-hand side of the slide is a psychology planning sheet that we've created for College of DuPage. You can see that it outlines all the required courses for the psychology major at North Central, but then we added in a column with COD equivalents so they could see what they should be taking or could take prior to enrollment. Taking this concept a step further, which is what we plan to do, it would be additionally useful to know which courses are suggested to take prior to transferring to ensure a timely graduation. And these could be designated with an asterisk or highlighted, again, just showing that while all these courses are available, these are the ones you should really prioritize taking prior to transferring to the four-year institution. Now, some institutions, they might take this model and present it differently in the form of a four-year program map that showcases what students should take in their first 2 years at a community college, and then what they should take in their second 2 years at the four-year institution. The transparency in this sort of plan is incredibly beneficial to students and advisors. Although one thing to note is that the #1 college major across the country is still undecided. So we don't want to dissuade students from certain majors just because they appear to be off track. So it's important to supplement these program maps with detailed explanations of different entry points and ways to catch up. And as you've heard us say before, and we will continue to say again, it's vital for students to have constant communication with advisors and counselors. The best transfer experience stems from a collaborative approach between the student and professionals at both the 2- and 4-year institutions. Our hope is that by participating in IAI, updating transferology regularly, creating resources like articulation guides and planning sheets, we hope that all of this makes the transfer process easier and more transparent for students. While these pre-advising tools are incredibly beneficial, it's equally important for students to stay in touch with their advisor and counselor throughout the process. Resources like, for example, this Cardinal checklist that I've created help guide students with a timeline of what they should be doing each semester in their journey. This concept by no means is specific to North Central or something that I did on my own. Like all good plans, it is adapted from other institutions. The outline for this one roughly was inspired from University of Central Florida. So feel free to use, create, modify, and share with other people in the community, as the goal is, again, to help the students. In this specific Cardinal checklist I created, I broke down what the student should be doing after their first semester or first year of enrollment, the fall of their second year, and then in their graduating semester. So you can see as you break it down, the goal here is, again, a collaborative approach between both institutions. After that first semester, that first year, they're visiting the four-year institution, maybe having an opportunity to tour campus, get a credit evaluation, provide information on what their timeline should look like. And likewise, with their community college advisor, they should be making sure they're on track for an associate's degree, taking correct prerequisite courses, and provided some helpful links to our catalog or to our articulation guides. Then after that first year, moving into the second year, now's the time you can start applying and a link to the application, reminding them to submit transcripts, AP scores with a link to what scores we will accept, in addition to CLEP and other areas that they might have different credits they'll be sending in. Making sure they complete the FAFSA, knowing what the school code is, institutional scholarships, other institutional resources that'd be great to get them thinking about as early as possible. And then again, touching base with the community college advisor, seeing if there's any personalized events happening for that institution on the community college campus, maybe an on-the-spot admission day or an advising day. And again, checking that, make sure you're on track for graduation at the community college. And then the graduating semester, helping guide them towards making their decision and paying their deposit. Maybe there's other orientation checklists or modules that students need to sign up for, registering for classes. And at the community college, equally important is to make sure you're applying for graduation, sending in your final transcripts, things like that. So really the goal is, to help us move the needle on transfer completion rates for transfer students. We really need to make sure that we're creating roadmaps and removing as many barriers along the way to ensure success. And speaking of barriers, even though the topic of transfer students has come a long way in previous years, we felt it necessary to still address some of the common misconceptions that we still hear today. So, myth number one, you go to community college only if you're not accepted to a four-year college. Of course, we all know that is incorrect, or we should know that's incorrect. You go for affordability. You go for academic flexibility. There's ample course offerings between day and evening, online or on campus, during the traditional semester or during the summer semester. You go for academic rigor, and I'm going to circle back around to this at the end, or a little soapbox moment. You go for school life balance. Maybe you have health issues that you're dealing with currently, or caring for a family member. You have work, community involvement, church involvement. It could be a whole host of reasons that the community college allows students to manage this a lot easier in many cases than going directly to a four-year institution. And you go for personalized intention, similar to the benefits of high school, where they have small class sizes and getting to know their teachers more intimately and having immediate opportunities for involvement. So a lot of benefits. And the one that I skipped over, academic rigor, I think it's really important for both the four-year and the high school population to continually hear this. Just because the cost of attendance is less at a community college doesn't mean the quality of education is too. These are highly trained faculty members, student and academic affairs professionals dedicated to helping students. And Ashley, I think, did a really nice job helping kind of frame this for us in some of our meetings about this topic. It's important to remind students and parents and even faculty and staff that community colleges, they're publicly funded. So you're paying a lifetime of taxes to help keep these costs low for students. It's not because it's an inferior education. End of rant. Pass it over to Ashley for myth number two.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, really quick to go off of Nick's discussion. I think a lot of times, students are conditioned to say, what's the catch? Like, I'm paying so much less money, like there's got to be something. And I think we're all a little bit like that, right? But I think it is important, especially as a high school counselor, to really know that point and to drive that home, because again, it's always about like, what's the quality? Are we losing quality on the dollar amount? No, you've just paid so much money in taxes that we are able to provide this at a subsidized rate for you. Moving on, so transfer students can't get merit scholarships. We hear this one all the time, and that is false. Transfer students have a wide range of opportunities to gain merit scholarships. I would say both on the high school to community college end, and then on the community college to four-year institution end. So in particular, I'll give an example, especially for our traditional high school students that live in our district. We have a really robust Scholars Award program that offers anywhere between $1,000 a year up to a full ride tuition for 2 years at College of DuPage for those high achieving high school students. So not only are you getting money on that front end, but when you go to transfer, really thinking about the opportunity to get money as a transfer student. So some things to consider, a lot of times these transfer scholarships are based on cumulative GPA. Many are connected with the honors program, both at the community college and at the four-year institution. So encouraging your students to really look into those honors opportunities. I think that students generally, at least students we've worked with, sometimes are nervous about honors classes because they think, depending on the high school they go to, sometimes honors classes can be viewed as being really, really competitive. And while yes, like honors classes at the community college can be somewhat competitive as well, it's more building that community. It's not so much saying, I want to get an A higher, I want to get a higher grade than Nick, as sometimes it is in high school. It's more about how are you building your academic profile to be successful in that way. And then get, again, major and legacy. So encouraging students early on in that process of figuring out how to best position themselves to earning more of those coveted transfer scholarships. I'll pass it on to Samantha.
Thanks, Ashley. Our third myth is my courses may not transfer. This is absolutely false. As shared earlier, there are just so many ways to ensure course transferability. IAI, transferology, articulation agreements, and earning associate's degrees are easy ways to confirm that students are not just taking courses that will transfer, but taking meaningful credit towards degree completion.
Myth number 4, I won't graduate on time. Similar to what Samantha just said, after all the resources we've outlined today, there is no reason students can't graduate on time. Of course, the sooner the student knows they want to transfer, the better off they'll be. But as we highlight here, some important statistics that we should continually promote is to showcase that the national transfer statistics don't apply to everyone. We've already heard in our keynote this morning that Illinois continues to be the #1 in the nation for bachelor's degree completion among community college transfer students. And Illinois North Central would echo these successes. As you can see that both our institutions have tremendous graduation and retention rate for transfer students, almost 80% graduation rate and almost 90% retention rate this past year during a pandemic. And this isn't a small sample size either. Both our institutions are comprised of over 1/3 transfer students. And at ISU, you can see the numbers almost half of their graduating class being made up of transfer students. This is an important population that's proven to be successful after starting elsewhere, usually at a community college.
Awesome. The last myth we wanted to dispel is I have no idea how to start the transfer process and there's no one to help me. I would hope after hearing this presentation, you can see all the touch point of resources. I think that sometimes that excuse within students is more of being overwhelmed by the resources, that they're like, oh gosh, I don't know where to start. So I would definitely encourage you to really work with your students on not relying solely on someone else's transfer experience and going straight to the source. Again, that's where you get a lot of those misconceptions of a student that may have left out a lot of details as to why they weren't transferring on time. Students just hear, oh my gosh, like none of their credits transferred, and they run with it, as opposed to getting that experience firsthand. So getting their questions answered by the high school counselor, again, by the 2-year college admissions counselor, and then the 4-year counselor, you build that team of experts to really have the best interest of the student in mind. And then lastly, just knowing that you are not alone. In Illinois, we have on average of 50,000 students that transfer every fall. I would anticipate, I don't have these numbers yet, but I would anticipate that number is only going to continue to grow as higher ed kind of goes through this evolution with the pandemic, and kind of the uncertainty around a lot of the financial questions on a lot of our students' minds. So I think that, again, this conversation is really timely, considering kind of every transition higher ed is going through. So really keeping in mind that encouraging your students that they're not alone in this process.
Amateur mistake, I was muted. As the finale of this presentation, we thought it would be fun to share some celebrities who started at the community college that you might not have known about, and they went on to find great success. So if you needed some fun examples to share with your students, just let them know about Morgan Freeman and Tom Hanks. That could be them one day. Okay, now it's time for the Q&A part of our presentation. As shared earlier, if you could submit questions in the chat, either directly to the presenters or for everyone to see, we will go ahead and spend the next 5 minutes here answering those questions. And I have the first one here. It's for Ashley. If students don't know what they want to study, how can community colleges help them find a major?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's a lot of different ways to find a major. So I think if we even start from the beginning when we were talking about dual credit opportunities and early admissions, that could be a really good opportunity, even at that high school level, to allow a student to explore different options. So we have students that may take a class over the summer in an area that either A, isn't offered at their high school, or B, an area they want to get more experience in. So that's definitely one way from the early onset of kind of thinking about what they want to study that a student can get experience. Additionally, our Associate of Arts, Associate of Science programs are really geared to a variety of courses. So it's not just you're taking English, you're taking math. There's so many different categories of classes that a student can kind of jump in and see what makes sense for them to really gain that experience. And then outside of classes, really exploring some of the career resources that we offer at the community college. We offer career resources not just for that high school student, but for all ages and all community members. So really exploring what the offerings are at your community colleges and seeing how we can kind of align students in those opportunities.
Thanks, Ashley. Yes, I know when I'm having this conversation with students early on at the community college, I often talk about just eliminating big academic areas that you don't want to dive into. And sometimes that helps just narrowing down specific areas of or disciplines that they can look more into, just eliminating the grandness of all the options, the areas that they don't want to study. Okay, let's see this one. Maybe Nick, you could help with this one. If students start at the community college, do they still need to send their high school grades or test scores once they transfer?
There we go. My whole menu to unmute myself had disappeared forever. It's very much institution specific. A lot of institutions, once you have 1 year of college coursework, around 24 credit hours, you do not need to submit high school transcripts anymore. But it could be, there are other institutions that it might be less. It might be as little as 1 semester worth of college credit when you don't need the high school transcript anymore. So good to check in with the individual institutions on what their policies would be. But I think as a general rule of thumb, once you have over 1 year of community college credit, you probably do not need high school anymore for admission consideration.
Thanks, Nick. Ashley, how do I know if I'm advising students to take the right dual credit courses in high school?
That's a great question. I think it really depends too on your community college and what sort of dual credit opportunities they're offering. I think that COD historically has offered quite a bit of technical courses. So classes in cosmetology, classes in auto that go to a very specific applied degree program. However, there's now more of a push to get more of those general classes in that dual credit curriculum. So English, math, all of those opportunities. I would definitely recommend working with your dual credit office to make sure you're connected to those other counseling resources. And again, remember, it's not about doing as many credits as possible. It's going to be more about, again, either the exploration for the student or those foundational courses that are needed for all the different degree options. So I would recommend connecting with that dual credit office to see kind of how your institution handles it.
Perfect. And I see one last question here. Some really good conversation happening in the chat regarding general education. Really good points here. The last question I'm seeing here, Nick, is it ever going to be recommended to earn an applied associate's degree?
I think, again, institution specific, right? I think a lot of the generalized statements where you're taking an associate's degree and applying it towards the bulk of a bachelor's degree, you're getting exemptions from the gen ed. Usually is referring to an AA or an AS degree. So I would say if you have a student that's interested in an AS, just make sure you're reaching out to the individual institutions to see if there's any issues that could come from that, as long as there's no misconceptions that by doing this, I'm automatically fulfilling a general education package at a four-year institution. That could be the only misconception I think that could come up when you just are blanketly referring to these policies as an associate's degree, when in reality, a lot of times we're referring to an associates of arts or an associates of science.
I want to just say something really quick onto that, Nick. So yeah, at the community college, we generally say an applied associate degree, while it's not one of those things that is like, no, it definitely won't transfer. We have really specific partnerships for applied associate degrees. So one off the top of my head that we talk about a lot is our applied associate degree in automotive. We have a very specific partnership with Southern Illinois University to do their 4-year kind of transition that applied degree to that bachelor's degree in automotive sciences. So again, you know, it's very, very important, especially for those more tech major specific degrees, to really look at the different partnerships we referred to.
Thanks, Ashley and Nick. I think with that, I want to thank you again for attending this session. I'll turn it over to Brian. I think he's going to close us out, but thank you for attending and what we'll probably see in the next session here coming up.
I would like to thank our presenters, Nick, Sam, and Ashley, for a great presentation. Thank you all for participating in this session. Please reach out to them. Their contact information is on this slide right here. So if you have any more questions pertaining to this presentation, please reach out to them. This presentation was recorded, so you will be able to get that information I know in a further email. We do have one more session for the Transfer Summit. That's our Birds of a Feather for our 2-year, 4-year high school counselors, CBO, and other categories. So please join us for that next session. You will be receiving an evaluation email after Transfer Summit. We are always striving for a better Transfer Summit and a better experience, and your feedback will definitely help with that. So again, thank you, our presenters. Thank you for participants. Please join us for our last session for the Transfer Summit, Birds of a Feather. Thank you all.